So you want to write a poem or a book? Or you want to learn more about the realm of literature? Where should you start? What should you write about? These may be some of the questions you have as a writer starting out. Hi, I'm Amanda, and I am a master's student in English literature. I am an avid reader and writer of poetry and fiction novels. In this video, I will walk you through some of the basics of writing a poem or fictional book, and some tips for my personal journey of creative writing. All right, let's get started. Poetry! Poetry. The language of lovers, the language of dreamers. Poetry has long been an outlet for creative expression, with topics ranging from nature to love and friendship to mental health. You can write about any topic your heart desires. Star Wars? Sure. How I Met Your Mother? Sure. Your best friend? Sure. Your ex-boyfriend? Also fine. Now here's a question. How can you start writing a poem if you've never read a poem before? You can't! So you need to read some poetry, learn about the forms and structures, rhythm and rhyme. That may help for the flow of your poems. For this video, I'm talking mainly of free-form poetry with no particular rhyme scheme or structure, because that's what I write, but it works for any form and structure too. If you want to try sonnets or haikus, be my guest. Here are some words with examples that may be helpful as you read poems and write them too. I got the definitions from Google and Oxford Dictionary because I'm not that great at defining things, but let's see. Okay. So a metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. For example, her eyes were diamonds, or the sun smiles, because her eyes aren't actually diamonds and the sun can't actually smile. Well, probably not. Not as far as we know. So a simile is a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another thing of a different kind, used to make a description more emphatic or vivid. For example, as brave as a lion. Assonance, resemblance of sound between syllables of nearby words, arising particularly from the rhyming of two or more stressed vowels, but not consonants. For example, sonnet, porridge, but also from the use of identical consonants with different vowels, e.g. killed, cold, culled. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. For example, all alligators are amazing. So those four words all had A in them in the beginning, right? So now let's look at a poem together and find some examples of the terms like a metaphor. So this is a poem that I wrote. I haven't talked to you in weeks. I haven't been able to face you. Rejection is the ribbon that ripples through my ribs as the thing in my chest sings sad songs to soothe itself. The organ keeps me up at night. A million notes plinking in my mind. I look at the endless sky. The city cigarettes smother the stars. I know nothing but the blue blanket that cocoons me and surrounds my soul. Okay, well, for the purpose of this video, I'm only going to read those first two stanzas because the metaphors are mainly there. So the metaphor is rejection is the ribbon that ripples through my ribs, and also the thing in my chest sings sad songs, and then the city cigarettes smother the stars. Those are all examples of metaphors. And then, well, now it's time to start coming up with ideas for your own poems. Here are some tips that have helped me start writing a poem. Number 1, come up with a title first to spark imagination. Number 2, use a random generator for a writing prompt. Number 3, use an object or random word generator. Pick 5 words and run with them and see what ideas come up. Number 4, use the picture as a prompt. Look at the picture and write down any words that come to mind, then try writing a poem. Number 5, pick a theme or topic first, or central idea or message. Number 6, free write. Write anything that pops in your mind for 5 minutes, then stop and look over what you've written. Circle anything or highlight what you think could be useful for the beginnings of a poem. Remember, writing poetry takes time and practice to develop, so don't be discouraged if your first tries don't turn out the way you hoped. Micropoems are shorter poems that could help you edit later to become longer ones. Here is one such formula that you can use to get your poem started. So I'm only going to have 4 lines in this micropoem. The first line is, for the first line, use a verb in imperative form. For example, speak, move, let, be. And then use my and fill in the blank with a noun. For example, speak, comma, my ink. Line 2, use a color or object and a verb. Speak, my ink. Magenta seeps. Line 3, use a conjunction or connecting word and, because of, in, and plus an object, place, name, or thing. Speak, my ink. Magenta seeps in syllables. And for the final line, it's line 4, use any pronoun, she, that's the one I chose, she, and verb is, and then describe an event with verb in continuous present form at the end. On the brink of breaking, or to simplify, she is breaking. So the final poem is, speak, my ink. Magenta seeps in syllables. She is on the brink of breaking. And then for variations, you can edit or add a title. So I added incorrect as my title. And then questions to ask yourself post-writing. Does this poem reflect what I want to say? Is there anything specific I want to say? How can I edit the poem later to reflect deeper meaning? Or how does it feel to write from a prompt or formula instead of working with a theme or topic? I've only covered some of the ways you could write poems, but there's a lot more. Feel free to do further research or ask in the comments if you have any questions. Some next steps after writing a poem. You could share your poem with the world. It's entirely up to you. You could go to local poetry open mics or post on Instagram. You could give or dedicate your poem to a friend. You could start collecting poems for a whole long poetry collection. Or you could never share your poems and just write it for yourself. So now that you have some tools and tips for writing poetry, it's time to put it into action. Remember to read poetry, practice regularly, and don't be afraid to share your work with others. Who knows? You could be the next great poet. Fiction. Telling stories is not that hard. We tell stories daily to our friends and family. I fell down while running today. Oh, my boyfriend brought me flowers. But writing stories for others to read may be a different universe altogether, because we need to plan out or think more of a plot. We need to think about complexities of characters. You might know already that a fictional story generally has a beginning, middle, and end. But have you learned about plot, character development, character motivation, and story conflict? Here are some things I've learned over the years that have been helpful to my fiction writing journey. First, let's go back in time to about 14 years ago. When I was in middle school, I thought writing a fictional story to be read meant just writing whatever you want on and on and on until you just get bored. And so I did. I started writing a story about a skater girl who liked the popular boy. I wrote pages upon pages upon pages, like 100 and something pages. But now that I look back, I had no real plan for that story, so I didn't end up finishing it. Abandoned it, the project, so sad. I hadn't learned about what a plot is, or that my characters needed to be multidimensional rather than flat. I didn't know that my characters had to want something for the story to drive forward, that there needed to be conflict and bad things happening before a resolution. It's important for characters to be multidimensional to make them feel more genuine and real to the reader, like a real person. Nowadays, there are many genres of books, but most fiction books follow the formula of beginning, middle, and end. The plot means the meat of your story, the progression of the story, how it starts, then what happens next, and what happens after that, and what happens in the middle, and how it ends. Some genres of fiction include fantasy, romance, mystery, thriller, science fiction. The fantasy genre is anything that includes something not of the real world as we know it. For example, mythical creatures like fairies and werewolves, different lands and ancient magical kingdoms. It can involve different magical elements too, like Harry Potter. We usually need to consider world building for fantasy of starting from scratch, which is like constructing an entirely new story world. Romance is about love stories, the power of love. Mystery and thriller are about solving crimes, things to be revealed. And for science fiction, I'm going to use Google as well because I don't know how to define it very well. So science fiction is fiction based on imagined future scientific or technological advances and major social or environmental changes, frequently portraying space or time travel and life on other planets. Thank you, Google. So for most books in these genres, generally something bad happens, and misfortune keeps happening to the character to prevent them from getting what they want, until they realize perhaps what they want isn't what they want, and they want something else. Through the journey, there may be adventures, different locations, interactions with other characters. So, difficult circumstances are what drive a plot forward until the climax and falling action. The climax is a point where all the bad things happening in the story come to the worst point, and then the falling action is what happens after everything bad happens, moving towards how it turns out in the end. So going back to how characters should be complex, we don't want too simple of a character who only seems to show one side of their personality. We want the real thing, just like a real person who isn't flat and 2D. A person has dreams, aspirations, relationships, experiences, quirks, special things that make them who they are. These character qualities should be consistent and believable. If they change, they should still make sense in relation to the general development of the person or character. For example, someone who is afraid to trust people but loyal and determined, like Katniss Everdeen of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Would it make sense if suddenly Katniss happened to be trusting and naive? Wouldn't we want an explanation or exploration of how it came to be? And would it even make sense in the grand plot of the story? So there we have it. Are you feeling more ready to start writing? It's okay if not. I hope this video can help you learn more and be inspired to write, if not now, then in the future. Keep it up, and do let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and discussion in the comments. Please do like, subscribe, comment for more, and thanks for watching. I just said that in the wrong order. Okay, bye!